Here's a 95 Toyota Camry V6. So we're going to be working on the AC compressor. When you look at the AC compressor, there's your problem.
Barely turn it.
We got to get some more Scotty grunts in there. The belt was what was melting, so we'll just put a new one of those on. This is why mechanics hate engineers. There's an AC rail line that directly blocks that. So you got to open the system by pulling this AC line apart and get it out of the way before you can pull the other bolt.
Brian's Mobile One.
Today on Brian's Mobile One,
we're doing part 2 of 2, a repair video on this Camry 1995 3-liter V6. We're going to open another door here with our screwdriver and kick this guy out. Rent was due on the 5th. The push button release is right here. You gotta push that down and then you can pop it out. It's easier to do with a screwdriver and then try to get your finger in there. As we said, the bolts to get the compressor off are blocked by the lines. We gotta pull the lines. Before we can do the lines, you gotta evacuate the system. If you need to evacuate the system, make sure to do that at a shop. You can pay them to recover all the refrigerant in it, and then make sure to evacuate before you charge it again. So the vacuum pump, you can get those. I've got a link in the description. Here's where the high side is. Driver's side, just right above the receiver dryer. If you're replacing a compressor, especially if there's been a failure, it's a really good idea to replace the receiver dryer as well. It's basically like the oil filter for the air conditioning system. Again, make sure you get a shop to pull all the refrigerant out of it, and then it won't be spraying in your face when you do one of these. Like a shook up root beer, if you put pressure on the lid, this being the lid in this case.
no, just kidding.
So anyway, we're going to pull that out. It helps. You don't have to wrap it in paper towel, but it helps. I do both sides. That way you don't have to worry about contamination getting in there. You just don't want chunks of stuff getting in where it ought not to be. This is the main one that you have to get before you can get the compressor off. And like I say, you have to take them off anyway. But that bolt on the bottom side is right behind it. If you're reusing your O-rings, and maybe you are, it's a good idea to pull it out real straight and not be rough with it as it's coming out, because that can cause a leak later. This is being reused, so we got to keep everything somewhat sterile. Twist it, turn it over, shove it in the hole. If you have a screwdriver or something to pack it with, go for it. However, make sure you don't cut it and create debris out of the paper towel. You want it to remain in one piece, so when you yank it, it all comes out as one. There we go. It would kill us all. So we're just gonna get this undone. You gotta budget how many times you hit the back end of your ratchet. If you do it too many times, you can have like carpal tunnel kind of crap going on. Nobody's got time for that. Fun thing about a 12mm socket is you can put it on this way. That's all fun and good, but you can put it on this way too. And that's something. But you don't teach you that in your trade school tech class. So that one all the way clear. And there was much rejoicing.
Yay!
Just crack it. This is where it's really nice to have a tool like this, because everything's hot and pokey and you don't want to stick your arm in there. Just do this, just send it. You don't have to bang around and chew your arm up. Pull that one out, set it by the other one. At this point, it's a good idea to hold on to the thing, because it's not held on by much. Here. So when we looked at this at first, there was an alternator here, there's brackets, and it was like, man, does that go out the top or the bottom? But now looking at it, it's no big deal. It's easy to see that it'll just fit out through here without much fuss. So you can see where the stuff is melted out between the endocrinuses of the compressor. That's a made-up word. That's just the sauce that holds the wire together on the inside for the magnet. Let's go to the bench and we will swap over this piece onto the new compressor.
You check this out. Brent's not in here. So this one, this one.
One of these things is not like the others. Oh wait, there's only 2 of them and they don't match. So we need to take this plate off of here and transfer all the junk from here to here. Let's begin. I've got a little extension because this sticks up, so you got to sneak in around on it. Same thing with that, it gets you in where you need to be. When you take these off, sometimes they suck onto it, so you have to pull kind of hard. Other times they pop off. It just depends on the altitude and temperature where it got put on. Ooh, look at that beautiful gasket. Brand spanky new. The question is, which bolts do you use? Do you use the ones that were on the bracket and move them with it? Or do you use the new ones? What I do is I just look at them, bolt, and see which is a better bolt. So they look really a lot the same. I'm gonna go with the new ones on this case. Normally I like the green or the brassy colored coating that are on these because it's pretty rust resistant. But I don't know, it's judgment call and it's not that critical. Unless you live in the Rust Belt. And if you got an opinion on that, let us know in the comments below. So we're not losing anything by not transferring this screw here because we have one here, so we don't really need it, and we've got the circuit all handled. But the bracket's kind of nice, and the bracket is also secured by that same screw, so we are going to transfer it or just leave it on. What we can do, instead of taking this off when we just need the bracket, we can just clip that right there. With what shall we clip it? Dear Eliza, problem solved. So now we've got the bracket, we've got the wire holder, and we can just put it on there. It is a good idea to take a little bit of oil and put it on here. And this looks really dry. I don't see any oil evident at all. You know you're going to need some in the system. So a good way to put dye and oil in is to take your dye, put it in the oil, and then put it in the compressor. So that's what we're going to do. This bottle contains about 8 fluid ounces, typical amount that you put in a compressor in a system about this size. And there's a mathematical formula for how many kgs of refrigerant to how much oil to put in. We'll put that right here. Normally when these are full it's about to here, and that's 8 ounces, so we're going to guess 4 is about here. And that's right about where we're at. But you want to put somewhere between 2.5 and 4 ounces if there isn't any in it. Here's some freaking guidelines for when you can't find the facts. As always, facts are always greater than guidelines. As for which side to put it in, I favor the suction side, just because it's funner to say that it sucks it in. But on the suction side, you put it in there and then turn it clockwise, or whichever way the engine rotates, and that'll pull it through the system. I like to make sure that I can see a little bit coming through the other side so you know that it's been through there and lubed it up. Looking at this, the one that blocks the line was this guy right here, and that guy right there, if you follow the casting marks, looks like it goes to this side. They kind of cross each other. This one goes here, and then the other one goes to here. Yeah. So we need to pour it down this hole. When you turn this over, you get an idea if you're doing the right thing, if it pulls it in. I can't see this being shipped without it spilling around. You can see how shiny this one looks from the oil that's on it. You guys want to see down inside of this thing? You can see that thing moving around. It's got some lube on it a little bit, not a whole lot, just enough to protect it. So we're going to add some so that it's not missing in the system. Another good rule of thumb that you can do is pour the fluid out of this and measure it. That's what you're supposed to do, and then match what it has. But with this car, it's been charged and recharged with stuff to where I think it might not be accurate anyway. So not super scientific, but we just want to get a general idea. Yellow snow, right? It's warm too. Yeah, do that a few times. Rock it back and forth. See how we think we're done, and then there's more, and then there's more. So you can see you just get a little bit more and a little bit more until it adds up to about what you have in the bottle there. I wish I could share with you how warm that is. It's just like, I don't know if you've ever peed into a pop can on a boat. You know, like if there's a lot of people in the area where the fish are, you just kneel down, pee into a can. It feels about that warm.
I've never done that.
Why not? You don't like fishing?
I love fishing.
I'm saying that right there is about 2.5 to 3.5 ounces. This too is about 2.5 to 3.5 ounces because it's about to that. 4, 3.5, perfect. So we're going to pour it down in the hole, and this kind of puts it in the bottom anyway. And I'm going to take a little bit of it and just kind of run it around, drip, drip, drip on the seal. And that way it'll look like it's leaking from all around here later. That's the crappy thing about having your dye already mixed in your oil, is it gets everywhere. You can use brake cleaner if you have to, I guess, to clean that up. A brake cleaner puts your seals at risk a little bit. But this car's so old, it's going to be in a museum because it's just been kept so nice so long. This is going to hang off this side, and then this is going to click into that, remember? And then this matches for that. The bolts will line up either way. This is the way you want to do it. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on these bolts. If something starts to rust, if there's Loctite on it, that kind of keeps it so that it doesn't rust. I'm using it in a way that you'd use anti-seize, but in a way that vibration and pressure changes and temperature changes, heat cycles, if you will, aren't going to screw with it. It looked so pretty and nice before, and now it looks like old and junky. And that's the view that you're going to have from the top. It's too bad it doesn't come with this already, but that's what you get. That's what you get. Sounds like a country song, huh? For falling in love. So you could use an Allen wrench shaped like an L. I feel bad for you if you are, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I'll leave a link for both. This is a 6mm. So you can use the L1s and do it by hand anyway, or if you want these, I really like them for the access and the speed, and it just makes the job more fun. So link below for both of those. On my thread locker, the cap just does all kinds of stupid things where it fills up with stuff and it doesn't get on all the way, and this crusts up, and then you have to poke it with a pin in order to get it going again. So then I came up with just stick your T-pin. I'll leave a link for these too if you want them. You stick that in there and it works as a cap too. So this looks a little different because this bracket is no longer on it and the wire's not being held up there. Reason being, we went with a factory bracket because it's just cooler. It just works better. We're running this because it keeps things out of the way great. The people got paid good money to design and build that. So we just unbracketed it and let it flow free through here because it's being held here. It looks like it's leaking some kind of proverbial ooze out the side of it like every cartoon from the 80s. Down, Mr. Tyler. Dun, 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 dun. In goes the compressor. Just line it up like that. So we gotta get all the bolts in place first, and then once all that's in place, then we'll hook the lines up. We went through and tightened these by hand. Once it's in that bracket, there's no going back unless you unbolt it again. You can't get to the bolts basically because they'll be underneath. So I just get this underneath and as I flex my fingers, it'll rise and fall. Another Indian trick you can do is have the bolt stick out too far so that it can get to the hole. Make sure you get enough threads on the first one that it doesn't rip them out. Because this is a cast iron thing, it's not as big a deal. If you say you're working on something, oh, this won't go through either. If you're working on something that's aluminum, that's soft metal, you could rip something out and then cause yourself all kinds of headache. Hassle. Have you seen that meme on Facebook where you guys doing a thermostat and there's a broken bolt and it's like when a 5-minute job becomes a 6-hour job? That kind of stuff. An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure, and it goes even more so when you're dealing with mechanic work. Ta-da! So this was tricky coming out, so point it to the front passenger side of the car, get it between the hoses, and then send it in a little bit. When you're doing a compressor, you have to be careful in the order that you tighten it down in. For example, there's a seam here or a seal here. There's another one right here where this bolts on. So you don't want to twist. That can break the O-ring and cause you to have a leak. So don't freak out about too much, just kind of pay attention and make sure that you go on evenly. On this one, that is not in the hole. There we go. What's so funny, Spanky?
I think nothing at all.
So we're not torquing anything too hard. I should have started this one by hand to begin with. We're having a good time and I forgot about it, but that's important because if you tighten the other stuff down, then you can't move it and wiggle it to get it to where it'll line up. How come you have shallow sockets and deep sockets? Well, when stuff sticks out, it can block access. That's why we do a deep socket. So I'm going to do the 3 and then follow up the other one. Put this guy on there, and then that protects the wire. This job's so much easier. We're just filling it with a lot of fluff. I'm just trying to add things that would be helpful to somebody. Appreciate that Milwaukee made these smooth so that you're not cutting hoses when you're in a tight spot like that. So I'm just using the same oil that's in the compressor to get on the O-ring here. So just run it across the top, down around the bottom. The whole point of doing this, and Q-tips are not always the answer, I'll tell you that. Sometimes you really got to field and chase down the little strands that come off. But as you push this in there, you just got to make sure that it goes smoothly. If you don't, it can cut the O-ring on the way in, and you won't be any wiser of it. So get that in there and then start your bolt. And then while I've still got the same Q-tip with the same lubricant on it, we'll hit the other one. Something tells me that they made O-rings better in 1995 than what they do today. These things look beautiful. They're nice and round, they're not squared off. That's the lion's share of doing the compressor. The rest of it is just getting the alternator back in where we took it off to get it in there. Alright, so we just started them by hand, so we got a few threads in. Follow it up with a ugga-dugga. I'm going to take this and line it up on the studs, throw some nuts on it, 10mm bolt the thing together a little bit, and move on from there. We got a bolt that marries this bracket into the other one here, and then a couple of nuts to keep things tucked in place. A little 10mm bolt holds the bracket together, no big deal. Until you lose the 10mm socket. Where's that thing? Let me give it the spin, listen to the bearing. Everything's closed at this point, so we don't really care, but you just check it and make sure that you want to put it in there. But before we do, to be fair, put that in there, and then we'll hit this with a hammer a couple times and knock that down so that it goes on smooth. See how that knocked clear down in there?
Yeah.
That's going to be some more tightening for me, but in the meantime it'll be real easy to line up. This is the nut on the back side. You don't have to worry about it dropping or falling out, but you do need to make sure it doesn't spin. I may run into something with that, but I don't think we'll have any trouble. This is one particular example where I really like this fuel ratchet because I have to drag that piece of metal through there. That sucks. The nut right in there and tightens it up to where it doesn't move. You don't want to go all the way or else it's hard, but see how it just holds it wherever I want it? That's the perfect way to do it. That's the way I like it. So we get on the bolt like that and then just get it closed. Still need to put a belt in there. So we're going to take a minute and put some wires on. Snug it. If you do this too hard, this is plastic and you can break it. So for this one, you can see that the buckle's here. I would think that it would go this way, but I'd be wrong. So I just need to make sure I turn it before I get to the bottom. This is another one of those things you want a screwdriver for. So the buckle goes to the outside like that. The memory of this, meaning the way that it wants to go, says it goes to the back. That's not the case. You gotta go like that. So I'm gonna take the screwdriver and just push on it here. And if it's crooked, I'm gonna push back here. Just whatever makes it get to where it wants to get down. Just make sure you hear that magic sound when it goes. Do I need a longer one?
I need to push it some more.
So it's bottomed out. It feels like it's on there, but I didn't hear the click. Oh, I turn it around all the way backwards, pull on it, and we're good. As long as you can't pull it off, it'll stay. That's a good rule of thumb, right? Then I take this tool, get the wire harness in there, and then close the door. What happens if you don't do these is your wires get wrecked, and then your air conditioner doesn't work. And if it happens right after you did the job, it's hard to ask somebody for a bunch of money for replacing all this stuff if it doesn't work. So respect the wires. That's one of the reasons I won't buy a Chevy nowadays is the wire harnesses and the loom and the connectors are not very reliable. You work on them and it's a mess. Tracking down wire issues is a pain. You wouldn't believe how hard I had to push to get that to click, but it's worth it. All right, let's take a look up here. There's not a lot going on there aside from the caps to put on. We're almost to that point. So you know what that means. Put the belt on, snug stuff up in place, evacuate and recharge. Looking at the pulleys, they line up beautifully. And then looking further into it, you can see there's still a bunch of stuff that flung off the old compressor clutch. So this is pushed down every bit as much as it was when we took the belt off, but it's not going. Maybe I have to loosen it a little more. I'm just going to try to pull out as much slack as I can. See if I can get it to go anyway. If you're off on two pulleys, for example, I'm off on the AC compressor clutch, and I'm off on the harmonic bouncer, so that's a lot of slack to bring up. So make sure you got at least one of them all the way on. But yeah, we're gonna have to do a little more on that. Did I just call this thing a little moron?
You did.
I did. So if I'm smart, I'll try to collect it all to where it's right on the alternator. I try to get it all in the same plane. There's a reason why I pulled it up here and not off to the side. But now that it's on, still just not quite gonna get it.
It is. I believe in you. You can do it.
This is called overcommitting. The question is, how tight do you tighten a belt? Do you know the answer, Spanky?
I do. 90 degrees.
Yep. What she's saying is find the longest run on the belt. This is short, that's a little longer. This is the longest run, like a hypotenuse on a triangle. I can twist this belt all the way around backwards. That's 180 degrees. This is 90 degrees. You got to get it to where the longest run will only turn 90 degrees. You do that, you won't squeak, you won't burn up your bearings from having it too tight, and you won't squeak on startup from being too loose. I'm going to get it to where it looks close. That looks pretty close, and now I'm going to hold it past 90 degrees, and I'm going to tighten it until it hits 90, and then quit it. Just like when you're tightening a bolt, there's a point where there's a big difference, like the curve on a function, the hockey stick graph stuff.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
All right. Okay, so this is your X. This is Y-axis.
Hey,
See, that's
yeah.
why Jason does it better than I do. He doesn't mess it up. He has everything drawn beforehand. So you got your Y-axis, your vertical plane, horizontal plane. So a log function, depending if it's inverse or not, goes along the X-axis for a long time and then pulls up. As you're tightening a bolt down, there's a point somewhere in here where it's like, yeah, and then it just really binds up, and then this point is like you can't go past it because it's just like hitting a wall. And then somewhere between here and here is where you break bolts off. But this is the sweet spot where you want to tighten a bolt. So you can feel that on the belt for the 90-degree turn, and you can feel that as you're tightening bolts down. The guys who write the torque specs for stuff, the way that they get those is based on experience of breaking bolts. For whatever size bolts there are, it'll give you what foot-pounds it should be. You know, like a M8 by 125 will have a so much torque rating. It's not like magic. There's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of consistency. So that slide nut on the back, let's go ahead and get the rest of that. You can see that I've got one circle left on. These batteries, the ones that come with it that are Milwaukee, are awesome. Like, you see me torque on them all the time and they're fine. I tried getting some cheap ones. This is a no-name brand, Powering the drill or the impact. So I try these and they work. With these, when you torque it, like, I can pull it off this way if I pull hard enough, or if I'm leaning on it, it just falls right out. Whereas with these, they stay in so much better. You can't pull hard enough to do that without breaking something. And if you pull on it as the wrench, it doesn't come out in your hand. These are a lot nicer case, but these actually do a pretty good job, and they're a lot less expensive. So if you can stomach that, or if you got a heat gun, do you use a heat gun around lithium-ion batteries? So as I'm making these videos, I want to be able to give something to somebody that's starting out so that they find value in it. Somebody that's doing the job can do the job. But then I also like to share what I've learned in my mechanic experience of 30 plus years so that other people can pick up on what tools I'm using or whatever. We help each other out, right? That's it. It's in.
It's time to evac.
We're going to check all of our fittings, make sure everything's good. We've got high side, low side. Check all of these connections. Kick the tires and light the fires. Let's open the pathway. So this is getting out all the moisture, all the ambient air, everything from having the system open. It's pulling it back out. When we have a vacuum, not only does it suck the refrigerant in real great, but it takes out all the moisture. Moisture's bad because when it goes from the high side to the low side, there's a small restriction. If there's water in there and it goes through, that moisture, when it drops in temperature from the expansion, it can freeze it and block it off, or it can cause other problems. So you want to make sure all the moisture's out. The only way I know of doing that is to pull a vacuum. The lower the pressure is, the easier it is to boil water. For example, when you're anyway, I could bore you about like boiling diagrams and reading the back of mac and cheese things about your elevation and when it boils and how much. But basically, when you evacuate it with vacuum, suck the whole thing down, it sucks all the water out. We are pulled down to just maxed out in vacuum. On the low side, the high side's tied up and away. We are hooked up to a cylinder on a scale. Our starting number is 8.8 kilograms. The capacity is 0.9 kilograms or 0.8. It's just got to be somewhere in there. So we're just going to run until it's 8 and a bunch of zeros and then go a little bit past and we'll be there.
Yeah.
So just got to tighten down the negative battery terminal and it should start a lot better now. Funny little things that you forget when they're on the other side of the engine compartment. You need this all the way cold and turned on, and the AC button needs to be lit up. Alright, it's time to tear it up. T-A-R-E. So put that on there and it'll be about perfect if you get it down to just 8. As soon as I opened it, I meant to have this on, but you can see that it spikes up. So that goes well up over, and then you hear the compressor kick on. That's because the sensor in there recognizes that it's got pressure. The compressor is on, it's sucking it in. So by the numbers, it is taking on refrigerant. Just get it to where it's 8 and a bunch of zeros and we'll cut it. And by cut it, I mean close the low side valve. This is why if you're using a postal scale with automatic off, because you're cheap, you got to write down the number and go by the weight. I got this open and it's sucking it in again. and then kick back up. It's going to take a little while to circulate. We've got some blockage from the oil we did in the compressor. But if it runs at 35 psi, that's about right. Right now it's at 38, 39. It might be a little bit overcharged, but temperature makes a difference too, and it's really hot in here. The hotter it is, the higher the pressure is going to be. Anyway, let's go check the vent and see how cold it is. The compressor is just humming away. It's nice and quiet. It's not flinging all kinds of material everywhere. So how about the vent? How does it feel there?
It feels amazing. It's nice and cold.
How's it?
Yeah, I'm just gonna hang out right here.
Yeah, isn't that nice after working in a hot garage to get in a
So
car with the
nice.
AC working? Very cool.
Just one last piece to put on. Yay. Case closed.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to click like and subscribe.